Welcome back to the Bible Wait.
What?
We've been talking through 2 Samuel chapters 16 to 20. And right
Coming
now,
towards the pointy end of 2 Samuel now.
yeah, we're actually going to talk about chapter 19 today. And this has been chaos. This war, chaos, death, grief, all sorts of stuff is going on. And here we have King David, who was kicked out of his country, of his beloved Jerusalem, by his son who tried to kill him. And we have a battle has taken place and his son is being killed. And David is in deep grief.
Yes, because he didn't want his son to die.
No, he didn't. He even ordered the army, don't kill my son
He would have been
Absalom.
happy with capturing him, but he did not want him killed.
No, he didn't. And so David is here weeping and lamenting over the death of Absalom. And word reaches Joab, who is the commander of a third of his army at that time, but he's also his nephew.
Yes, he is. Yep.
And Joab,
he's the commander of all of the army. It's just that he's given a third to different ones.
on this battle.
Yes, in
Okay.
this particular battle, but he is the commander of all of it.
And he is also the guy that
Killed Absalom.
Ran him through with a couple of javelins or swords or spears or daggers or whatever it was.
Yep.
Yeah. And Joab hears about it. And he hears that David is grieving over his son. And the army struggles back to the city that day demoralized when they hear that David is crying, weeping. And they drag their tails, and the king is holding his face in his hands and he's lamenting loudly. So everyone can hear him saying, "Oh, my son Absalom, Absalom, my dear son."
Yep, he is grieving big time.
But Joab takes him aside and he rebukes him.
Yep.
Why does he rebuke him? Or what does he say?
Well, you read what he says. Do you want me to read it or do you want to read it?
I can, sure.
Yeah, go for it.
Now you've done it. You've knocked the wind out of your loyal
you're much
servants
better reading it.
who have just saved your life, to say nothing of the lives of your sons and daughters, wives and concubines. What is this? Loving those who hate you and hating those who love you? Your actions give a clear message. Officers and soldiers mean nothing to you. You know that if Absalom were alive right now, we'd all be dead. Would that make you happy? Get hold of yourself. Get out there and put some heart into your servants. I swear to God that if you don't go to them, they'll desert. Not a soldier will be left here by nightfall, and that will be the worst thing that has happened yet.
That's actually a really good summary of the emotion that is even in the other versions that aren't translations like that one is. That interpretations like that one is that's very much it. He is angry. He is strong with David. He probably feels like he can be strong with David anytime and get away with it. But now David's weeping and groaning and moaning, and he goes, "I'm going to really stick it to you." It's not bad advice. Like you understand it that these guys have just risked their lives for David, and I can understand why they would feel uncomfortable, to say the least, with the fact that their king is bemoaning them. It's valid. I would feel that way too if I was one of the troops.
Oh, yeah. And whether or not we know that the troops would actually desert David, we don't know that.
We don't know that.
No.
But I would feel like if I had, fought to protect my king, and then my king basically made it clear that I was just a pawn in the whole thing, and he's more worried about the fact that his enemy had been killed.
Yeah.
I get the emotion of all that.
Oh, I think it's wise advice. I think it's also the right advice.
It's the right advice in this situation. Yeah.
David has known this day was coming for a long time. He's known that the sin was going to catch up to him. So he needs to collect himself and get up and be the king at this point. He needs to lead the kingdom of God, that's what he was appointed for.
That was what he was appointed for, and he has to just basically man up and do it.
Yes.
Despite his grief and his loss. And there are times when, as leaders in life, whether it's in our family, whether it's in our church life or our employment life, there are times where we will make mistakes that will have fallout, but we still can't wallow in that. We still need to acknowledge that, like David has, and then just get up and lead again, because we can't make it about us, because the other people we're leading need us to lead them. Our kids need us to lead them.
Yes, yeah.
Our employees need us to lead them.
And I mentioned the word kingdom of God there on purpose, because they are essentially the kingdom of God.
They are the kingdom of God.
But also because this is representative of sort of you should seek the kingdom of God first, right? What's that verse? What's the rest of it?
Matthew 6:33. Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these other things will be added to you.
Yes, yeah. So David needs to put aside his personal grief and seek first the kingdom of God.
Your troops need you to do this. The people need you to be the man you're supposed to be.
Yeah. And sometimes in our life, as Christians, I think, and would you agree with me that there are times when we need to stop wallowing in our own self and actually do the things that God has asked us to do,
Yep.
like to seek his kingdom?
We need to make it about others, not about ourselves. Yeah, definitely. So if we make it about ourselves and we assert our authority and it's all for our own gain, wrong attitude. But if we have to just kind of strengthen ourselves and gird up ourselves and go, no, I need to lead, I need to be responsible, I need to be God's representative because other people need that in me, then it's others focused. And yes, there'll be times where you don't feel like that, where the grief is hard, where the leadership is hard. I think of, you were in America, but were you there when Rick and Kay Warren's son took his own life?
was.
So you were there. So you would have seen the way Rick and Kay grieved and recognized that they had to lead their people through their grief. That's a classic example of that. They didn't have the luxury of just completely pulling back. They had to find a way to do both. I think they did it admirably well.
They did do it. They did. And out of that deepest hurt has become one of their greatest ministries.
Exactly.
Yeah, particularly for Kay.
Yeah, very much for Kay. And it came from that sense of we have to lead these people. We're grieving and, there's space for that, but they didn't shirk the responsibility of leadership in the middle of their own grief.
No, and so I feel like in this scenario, Joab does the right thing and he's reminding David, hey, you are the God-appointed leader of this kingdom of God. You need to get up and do the right thing by your people.
So earlier on in the afternoon, he's completely gone against David's wishes and killed Absalom, which is wrong.
David probably doesn't know that.
He doesn't know
point
that. No, that's right. That's wrong. But nonetheless, that does not mean that Absalom's advice is wrong in this moment.
Yes. And look at that. We can see that sometimes we get things really wrong and sometimes we get things really right.
Complicated
But
beings.
God still loves us anyway.
Yep.
Yes. And God still loved David here. And
as the story goes on, it's really clear that David gets the message. Somehow or other, he gets the message that Joab has done the dirty.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, we can, putting two and two together, you do realize that. So, but the king here takes his advice and he comes out and he stands at the city gate right beside the men as they're all coming back. He greets them and soon everyone knows and they're like, oh, look, the king has come out to receive us. And sometimes we need to know that God is for us. If David is representative of Christ, we need to know that even though we're weary, we're battle weary and things, he's still there greeting us.
Yep. That's right.
Welcoming us in. Yes.
Yep.
And it says here, the whole army came and presented itself to the king. But the other ones, the Israelites, the ones who followed Absalom, had fled and they'd gone home. And meanwhile, the whole populace back in Israel, right, are complaining to the leaders.
Yes, they are.
Okay, so all these warriors have returned home. Absalom is dead, and they're having what seems to be a change of political heart. Mm-hmm. Would you say that?
That's exactly what they're doing. Whether or not there was enough of a groundswell of complaint. Well, that didn't work. Now we've got to go back to David. Let's find a way to get David back.
Yeah. And they're like, wasn't it David? They seem to remember who David was as well.
Yeah.
Wasn't it David who time and time again looked after us and he rescued us from the Philistines and now he's had to flee the country on account of Absalom and this is the guy we made king. So there's guilt here, and like they're feeling a little bit of guilt.
There's also potentially a sense, if you remember that Absalom it says, stole the hearts of the men of Israel through his manipulative scheming and kind words and over-graciousness and all that sort of stuff. Sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. A very charismatic leader can lead you down a path that you don't want to go down, and it's not until you're out of it that then you go, oh, wow, that was wrong.
Yeah.
I was deceived by that. And then once you're out of that situation, which they now are, there's no more Absalom, then they sort of start to wake up to themselves and go, what were we thinking?
So could you say then that if we are desiring to put God's kingdom first in our life, there are times when we might think or assume that we're doing the right thing, but we've been taken off the path and we've followed someone else. And so we're not seeking the kingdom. We're actually off path.
Yes. Although
we're doing the wrong thing. We're behind the wrong people.
I think we can do the wrong thing for the right reason because we don't know what we don't know. We're blinded. So I don't think it's like God's down on all of Israel necessarily. He's down on Absalom and Ahithophel and some of those conspirators. But I think God knows that most people are like sheep. Most of us don't know what we don't know until God graciously removes the blindness, and then we go, "Oh man, I thought I was doing the right thing." That's what the Apostle Paul will say. He was zealous for the Lord, but he was wrong in his zealousness. He was He was killing people thinking he was doing the right thing.
So we could be believing that we are kingdom-serving people, but we are doing the wrong thing. Yes?
Yes.
And it's not until God reveals the right thing that we turn.
That we might turn.
So God has revealed the right thing in this
this story. Yes, he has. And that's why for us, things like counsel of many people is important. You know, exploring other perspectives, not just listening to the one side of an argument all the time, because we might be believing the wrong thing and not realize it. So staying curious, asking different questions, they're all important things.
And here as well, when they say, wasn't it David who saved us? It's almost like you could put this in the context of your own faith, because when you do come to that moment, you realize, hang on a minute, remember what God already did for me.
Remember what God's done in the past.
Didn't he save me before?
Yes, exactly.
So why shouldn't I come back to him now?
That's right. Good point. Yeah, come to that point. We've wandered away. It's only, ever one step back. Good call.
One step. Remember what God has done before. Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and remember his character, and that's what they're talking about, David's character, Christ's character. We can think about it like that. So David, he hears about this and he says, he sends word to Zadok, the two priests that remained.
Mm-hmm.
And they remained not because they changed sides and were following Absalom. They actually remained because David told them to remain.
That's right.
So they're his priests, and he asks them and he says, why are you so laggard in bringing the king back home? You're my brothers, you're my own flesh and blood. Why are you the last one to bring the king back home? And tell Amasa. So I'm just going to talk about who Amasa was. He was actually head of the army on the Israel side. So he was replacing Joab, and he was working for
Absalom.
Yes. And he was the son of a man named Ithra and daughter
of Abigail.
Son of Abigail, yes. Okay, so he is
Joab's cousin and Absalom's cousin.
Yes, so he was running the army, so he had betrayed David in the sense that he was fighting against David. But David here offers him an olive branch.
It does offer him an olive branch.
Why would he do that?
Well, two reasons. I assume it's implied that at some point or other he realises, or he's had enough of Joab, and he realises Joab's out of line.
Okay, so he could have realised at this point that Joab actually killed.
Word might have got around that Joab was the one who killed him, and he goes, right, that's it. And in a moment of strength, he does what he never did with Absalom. He never did it with Amnon. He never was able to get to that point with Joab in the past. In a moment of strength, he goes, right, that's it. You've done your dash. I'm going to replace you. And he says, well, who am I going to replace him with? Oh, let's realign these two factions. I'll replace him with the army on the other side, because that's a political alignment. It's like it's like a coalition, joining two political sides together. So that seems to be the twofold focus of what's going on here.
Could we see this as a kingdom of God thing as well? Forgiveness and...
Yes, it is that. Yeah, it seems to be. We don't know if it was... repentant or whatever, but there seems to be that. That is once again a sign of grace, because ordinarily you'd kill off the entire army that was against you, or especially the commanders of the army. So
David is offering forgiveness, offering the olive branch, and setting up that when he comes back, he's not going to kill all these people.
Yeah.
Now notice that he didn't rush back. It's like he is waiting for God to bring him back.
Yeah.
So he's not forcing the kingdom of God. He's actually waiting for God's chosen time, and he's aligning people.
Which we've talked about multiple times in the last few weeks around the way David's leadership worked. He never enforced his kingdom. He was prepared to go, I believe God's called me to lead. Will you let me lead you? And he's asking them again, hey, do you want me to come back?
Yeah, he wants them to bring him back. He
wants them to bring him back, and he won't. So what he's saying is, I want you to willingly submit to my leadership. I'm not going to force it upon you to submit to my leadership.
Because he could have done that. He could have marched over and killed all the people that...
He could have done that way back in the days of Saul if he wanted to. He had plenty of opportunity. He had the whole heart. He had the hearts of Israel back then.
So this is David being David at his best.
David at his best.
So he's recovering his strength, I suppose.
Yeah. After hitting that rock bottom broken moment.
Still not inquiring of the Lord. Still doesn't say that here.
That comes a little later.
Yes. But he's offering olive branches left and right. And he also gets some things very wrong as well in this moment. So he offers that to Amasa, and then the king... Oh, it says here he captured the hearts of everyone in Judah.
Yeah.
So Judah is south.
Yep.
And the other parts of Israel that were referenced here were the northern kingdom.
Yep.
Okay. That makes sense.
Because Judah was he's
about.
from the tribe of Judah, and they were his original. He ruled over Judah for 7 years, while descendant of Saul and then civil unrest ruled over the rest of the nation of Israel.
And Saul was a Benjamite.
And Saul was a Benjamite, and he had to get back the tribe of Judah because they were the ones who largely had sided with Absalom. So he had to win them back.
Right, okay. So here he goes, and he's on his way. The king returns. He arrives at the Jordan just as Judah reached Gilgal on their way to welcome the king. So a bunch of people are coming to meet him, to welcome him back, to recommission him, I suppose.
That's right. To recommission him, reappoint him,
Okay, so even Shemei, the guy who was throwing rocks,
shows up.
Throwing rocks and kicking dirt on them and abusing him. He turns up. And he says, and he's a Benjamite.
He's a Benjamite.
Yeah.
He's he's from the family of Saul.
He hurries down to join the men of Judah so he could welcome the king. What a change of heart.
Well, whether it was or not, we'll see.
I know, exactly. And he brings 1,000 Benjaminites.
I think he's just political opportunist himself.
He brings them with him. And Ziba. Remember, we talked about him before, Saul's steward, with his 15 sons and 20 servants. They also these guys wade across the Jordan. So they don't wait on the side. They wade across the Jordan to meet the king. Sounds like these two people are guilty in my mind.
That's the impression the narrative's getting. Both these dudes are thinking, if we don't own up to this, better to own up to it and ask for forgiveness than be caught out and then not have any chance to get forgiveness.
Yeah. So they rush out and
They only had two options. They either had to flee the country, try and get away so they could never be done again, or they had to throw himself on the mercy of David.
Or they could do what Ahithophel.
Or that would be option 3 and take their own life.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so this is just also so fascinating. It really, really is. Game of Thrones, I keep saying it, but it's true. So Ziba, he comes and he says, don't think badly. Oh, sorry, Shema says that. Shema bows deeply in homage to the king. As soon as he was across the Jordan, the guy that was throwing rocks is now face down in the dirt, saying, don't think badly of me, my master. I could just see him groveling.
Yep.
Yeah. Overlook my irresponsible outburst on the day my master the king left Jerusalem. Don't hold it against me. I know I sinned, but look at me now. He's the first of the tribe to come and welcome him.
That's a far cry from get out, you scoundrel, you murderer.
Yes.
It's a big difference, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And this is kingdom seeking here, isn't it? Think of those people that are against Christ or against the kingdom of God. Once they realize what the kingdom of God is, they are going to turn.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Abishai here, the son of Zeruiah, who we already know, he interrupts and he says, so this guy, we should kill him outright. He should be because he cursed God's anointed. And David, what is it with you sons of Zeruiah? Why do you insist on being so contentious? Nobody's going to be killed today.
You know what's crazy about that is that Abishai wanted him killed when he was leaving the first time.
Yeah.
And this time he uses the very words that Abishai and Joab also told David to kill Saul when Saul was in the cave. And David was the one who said, I will not touch the Lord's anointed. So Abishai is now using David's own words against him to try to convince him that Shemei deserved to die because he was attacking the Lord's anointed.
Yeah.
But he's only doing it for his own gain again.
I did not know that. That makes sense. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. Okay, but he's like, nah, nobody's going to die. And the king says to Shemei, you're not going to die. And the king gave him his word. He wasn't going to kill him. And that's forgiveness. That's a real upside-down kingdom thing there. No kings, I think, would do that. They'd be ready
right at the end of
him.
his life, we'll realise that he doesn't totally let him off the hook, but that's
but in this
nature.
moment,
But at the moment,
at
the moment he does,
And then Mephibosheth, the grandson of Saul, arrived from Jerusalem. Now, remember, Ziba was Mephibosheth's steward, assistant,
chief steward,
caretaker, and was looking after his lands, basically. So
Mephibosheth, was king. Was sitting at the king's table while Ziba looked after, and his family looked after Mephibosheth's land.
Yeah, because Mephibosheth is
Saul's grandson,
but he's crippled.
Crippled?
Yeah, so he couldn't do things for himself.
Correct.
Okay, so he comes along, and David, I think, was very wounded by the fact that Ziba said Mephibosheth didn't want to come along and was in fact betraying the king, that Mephibosheth was glad that David was out because it was going to he's getting recompense for what happened to Saul
Yes,
or
exactly.
something?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So David was wounded by that because David had looked after Meph.
Yeah, he was definitely hurt when
Yeah.
he heard that news from Ziba.
Yes. And so
Because he basically effectively taken the kingdom away and taken the lands away and said, you can have him, Ziba.
yeah.
He's pretty upset.
And Ziba had lied, and that lie becomes apparent here because it actually says he hadn't combed his hair. Mephibosheth hadn't combed his hair or trimmed his beard or washed his clothes from the day the king had left. He'd effectively been in mourning.
Yes, exactly.
But the king asks him, "Why didn't you come with me?" And then Meph gives his side of the story. "My master, my servant, betrayed me." He basically tells lies about me. I couldn't get to you because, I can't get on my own donkey. And Ziba
Left me here.
left me here.
Yep, and then tried to politically scheme against me. Yep.
Yes, but the king is like, hang on, that's enough. Say no more. Here's my decision. You and Ziba divide the property between you.
Mm-hmm.
So the king had given Ziba all the property before when he heard that Meph had betrayed him. But now he doesn't do the right thing. He doesn't give it back to Meph.
Give it back. Yep.
And what's Meph's response here?
He says he can keep it all. I'm just happy that you're back. So Mephibosheth shows his own attitude right from the beginning. He was always aware of his unworthiness, his shame, and how he said, all my servants deserve nothing but death from you, all my descendants, but you have been good to me. He's aware of that.
Look at his heart for the kingdom of God there.
Yeah.
Nothing else matters but the kingdom of God.
Exactly. Yep.
There's not many people out there like that.
No, it's all power play. Some scholars will say it's interesting, why didn't David dig further? I often think David's tired, David's weary. It's one man's word against another. Maybe he can't be 100% certain of what the truth is. Maybe he's just trying to, once again, do similar to what he did with Amasa. He's just trying to say, hey, look, if I share the load, maybe we can blend you two together so there's peace because I'm sick of this infighting. How about I give you half each, Because we don't really know why David didn't dig back, because if Mephibosheth was telling the truth, Ziba probably deserved to lose it all and probably be stood down. But David, for whatever reason, whether it's just genuinely wanting to just try and bring peace or whether it's just weariness, he doesn't do that. He just says, let's just split it between you.
Could be still deeply wounded.
He could be. I don't think he would be. I think there's hurt there.
But Ziba also was loyal to David.
Yes, he had been loyal all that time. I think he just saw a political opportunity here to get himself ahead by using the situation to his own gain, and he did.
And another guy comes along. So there's people just coming left, right, and centre to greet David on this great return. How do you say this?
Barzillai. This is the dude that brought all the banquet to him when he was in Mahanaim.
So he provided the banquet in the wilderness in the midst of his enemies. Right?
Yep. So. Yep.
Okay. And David wants him to come and join him in Jerusalem, but Barzillai is like, I'm too old, but take my servant instead. He actually says, I'm too old, I can't hear music and I can't taste food.
Yeah. Yep. He says, I'm past it.
Yeah.
And so he's prepared to go back home to his hometown and die there.
Yeah. And he had served the kingdom well.
Yep. And Gilead's a long way from Jerusalem. Gilead's up in the Golan Heights of Israel, so it's a long way away.
So he was he a Jew?
Yes.
So he was, okay. But he was a deep believer in David's kingdom, the kingdom of God, and gave everything that he had in that moment.
In fact,
to support him.
We're running out of time, but there were, even in the time of Saul and all the unrest, there were some people from the land of Gilead who were trying to call David to be their king. David sent gifts to them and so on when they were faithful in the way they treated Saul's body and everything else. So David was trying to win favour up the north there. Maybe this guy was one of those ones that had come from up in the northeast of the country, and he'd probably been faithful to David through many, many years.
But he gives him his servant to go with him.
Yeah, and he says, "Here is my servant Kim. Here is your servant, my son Kimham." So a lot of people think it was actually his Barzillai's son.
And David agrees to treat him well, greets him with a kiss.
Yep.
Even and
he does a Mephibosheth to him.
Yeah. And so David does have a caring heart there.
Yep.
So he goes back, and then the whole army of Judah and half the army of Israel processed.
across the.
I wish we could cut that out. Anyway,
That's all right.
that just shows my humanity. Yes, they go over with him.
Yep.
And here's this. This just starts another issue.
It's not all done yet.
No, it's not all done. There's bickering. There's tribal
And this is now because
resentment.
And this is because the people of Israel, just because of the sake of time, when they head back, it was largely the men of Judah who had sided with Absalom, and then they show up to bring David back, and the people of the rest of Israel go, hang on a second, we were more loyal to him than you were. You were loyal to his son Absalom. How dare you go and bring him back without inviting us along? And that starts another tribal feud between them.
It's all going on because Judah, they're related to David, and then the Israelites make this claim, well, we've got 10 shares to one, which is basically the 10 tribes to one. And then there's just infighting, bickering starts to happen, which is going to lead to
another
civil war.
So even though one has been sorted, the family one, out of your, Nathan said to David, out of your own house I'm going to bring calamity upon you. Even though now there's been a family feud, that's kind of sorted. Now we're going to see it play out at the next level, at a tribal level.
Yes, there's a lot of pride.
The pool ripples are going further out.
Further, now. Pride, resentment, jealousy, all these things are at play. And even then there even says the last line here is, but the men of Judah took a harder line than the men of Israel. They were offensive to them.
That's right. There's a lot. They're staring each other down here, which is going to lead us to chapter 20 tomorrow, which is the final chapter for this week. And it's essentially the next civil war that breaks out as a result of this.
Yep.
All right, let's go there. Talk to you tomorrow. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bible. Wait, what? Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And you can also find us on all the socials. Just search The Bible. Wait, what? And to find out more about our church, just search C3 Camden, C3 Picton, or C3 Thirroul on the web or on the socials. Thanks for being with us today, and we look forward to talking to you on the next episode of The Bible. Wait, what?